All right. Anthony in Virginia, you're on the line with Jimmy and Forrest.
Hello.
How y'all doing?
What up? Hey, it sounds like you're driving. Are you driving?
Who, me?
Yeah.
No, I'm not driving, but the screener said there were audio issues, so if it becomes too bad, I might just give up. I don't know. Is it bad? Is it bad?
Right now I can understand you. It just sounded like there was like the air of a moving car behind. We just want to make sure that nobody's driving when they call in. So just to anybody who's thinking about calling in, first of all, if you're thinking about calling in because you believe in God, do call in. But also, we don't take calls from the road. Anthony, right now your phone's making like electric fart noises, but let's see what happens here. Go ahead. Give us some give us some stuff.
Yeah, so this like I said, if the audio is too bad, I know it's hard for the listeners, so I'll just hang up if it becomes too bad, but we'll try.
Give it a go.
We'll try.
So this is going to touch on a lot of the things that the last caller brought up, but really never got discussed. And I guess the starting point I would put forward is I hear skeptics, atheists always saying there's no evidence. There's no evidence for God. So my question would be, why do you not consider the universe and life evidence of God? What is
Anthony, I
wrong
love
with
you.
think that?
I love you because the way you actually asked that was so nice and sweet, and it has a level of a non-assertion to it. I, at the moment, believe you're actually asking me that question. And I just want to start by saying, I love you.
So don't get your hopes up.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Yeah, for the moment, we're good. Anthony, if you walk into a room, you find a dead body. Is that evidence of a murder?
I would say potentially.
Exactly. Potentially it is, if there is a murder. But what percentage of dead bodies that you come across are a result of murder, or that anyone comes across? How many are murder versus regular other causes?
I really don't know, but I would say definitely not all of them.
Yeah, it's not even most of them.
Right.
In fact, it's a tiny minority of them. So we walk in, we see a dead body, and we go, here are the candidate explanations. Now, with murder, we know murder is a candidate explanation because murders have happened before. Because we've proven, and I'm just going to do this with you because there's the audio farting again. So Anthony, right now,
connecting up to the internet.
It sounds like a dial-up tone. So right now, I'm just going to mute you while we're talking to just not have that audio in the background. It's not because I'm mad at you. So if I come across a body and I go, here are my candidate explanations, I pull on things that I have the potential to prove. So candidate explanations include murder because we've seen other murders. So we go to the universe and we go, what's the deal? And many of the questions we have about the universe we've answered, but there's a great number we don't even know the number we haven't answered. It would be disappointing to find out we've answered most of them and we've only got a few left. Hopefully it's lots and lots left. Hopefully scientists keep jobs even when AI takes over. But we don't actually have a demonstration that a God has ever been the explanation of anything as far as a universe or anything. So will I say that it is impossible for a person to prove that God should be a candidate explanation? No, I won't say that. Will I even say potentially that I eliminate the idea that potentially it was a God? There I'm not going to say yes, but I'm not going to say no. I'm going to say I have never been shown that potentiality exists with a God either. Therefore, until potentiality is demonstrated, I maintain agnosticism on that proposition. So overall, you're coming in and you find a body. In this case, you come in and you find a universe. We don't know what even all the candidate explanations are because we haven't answered that question. And if we did know all the candidate explanations, presumably we would have figured out among them which one was the correct one. But we don't, like with a murder, have evidence of gods before, but we do with murders. And if you come across a body, the only thing that you do conclude at first is, I've found a body. And so right now, all I conclude is, I've found a universe. And then there are other things that we've demonstrated and we've observed. If the body has a bruise on its face that looks responsible for the death, I might say, I see a bruise. Candidate explanation, bludgeoning. Or, look at that rock he might have fallen on. There's things that have potential because their potentiality has been demonstrated. Forrest, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would just add, and then I would love to get Anthony's take on this, because I do have something. I would like to hear what Anthony has to say to you first, and then I have a totally different direction I'd like to take this. So rather than me completely derailing, can we get him to respond to you?
Go ahead, Anthony.
Okay. Yeah. Well, so what I got from that is that what I guess I'm getting at is you wouldn't say it's totally irrational to posit that a potential candidate for the creator of the universe might be some kind of God, maybe not necessarily the God of the Bible or Quran, but something.
No, I wouldn't say that it's necessarily irrational, but I certainly wouldn't say it's rational. Again, I have not been shown that a God has that there is a rational explanation for a God. So my two options are to therefore say I have adequate evidence to call God irrational, or I've had neither demonstrated for me, rational or irrational. For all I know, there's an alien race that has a rational explanation, or there's an alien race that has an irrational explanation, but fucking humans haven't figured out either of them, for sure.
Okay. Would you say that, and this is something that was brought up in the last conversation about the idea of nothingness, absolute nothingness, which is something we don't understand. Not
just don't understand. We've never demonstrated that absolute nothingness has ever existed.
Yeah. So to me, logically, the fact that something exists necessitates that there was always something in existence. Because, and let me just finish my argument or my belief. Nothing cannot produce non-nothingness.
Why?
Nothing will always.
Prove it.
Why? Because you just made an assertion. Why can't nothing produce something?
Because if you try to grasp what nothingness might be, there's nothing there to produce any effect or any physical matter or
Anthony,
energy.
let me put it this way, because I think you don't get the question. Does nothing have any characteristics?
No.
Does it have any qualities?
No.
Therefore, nothing possesses zero qualities which would prevent it from creating something, correct?
Correct.
However, that's a little bit paradoxical, because it also possesses zero qualities that it would create something, correct?
Correct.
Therefore, we cannot assign attributes to nothing which can allow it to create or to not create. Therefore, anyone saying that nothing cannot create or nothing can create is not being honest or logical, as you're trying to appeal to. This is why, again, there seems to be some scientific consensus of we don't know what, but that there was always something, that there is something with eternal quality. And when you get into things like quantum physics and stuff, that stuff is stuff I don't even begin to understand. We, however, do often platform a physicist. If you ever have specific I'm sure we'll have Dr. Aaron Adair on again. He's a physicist who understands quantum physics. He's incredible, and there are things he does understand that are way far out of my grasp, but you could potentially call him. But there seems to be some consensus that something was eternal, even if they can't agree on what that something is.
Okay. I have a lot I'd like to say, but I know Forrest wanted to make a statement, so I guess I'll kind of pause it here.
Sure, I appreciate that. I would kind of be like restarting from the beginning here, where you're talking about that life and the universe are evidence of God. I study life, and the beginnings of life are a very big question in biology. We want to know where life came from and how it got started. And we don't have all the answers yet, but we know a whole hell of a lot now than we did 50 years ago. And we know a hell of a lot more 50 years ago than we did 100 years ago. We're learning more all the time. And as it stands right now, we know what life's made of. We know what those things that life is made of are made of. And we know that the things that make life assemble themselves all the time. We know where new atoms come from. We know how stellar nucleosynthesis works, that stars make all the different kinds of atoms on the periodic table. And we know that those atoms can self-assemble through totally natural, very mundane processes into complex organic molecules that make the things that make life. And for a long time, we didn't know how we got that next step. we can make amino acids, but how do we make those amino acids into proteins? And just, I think last year, there was a paper that came out showing that these amino acids assemble by themselves into these little peptide chains, these little very small protein chains on the surface of micro droplets of water. Amazing. They can do that. We had all the building blocks of DNA, all the different nitrogenous bases. We have found them in space. They self-assemble all by themselves, but we didn't know how they form together to form basic nucleic acids. This year, there was a paper that showed that basic oligoribonucleotides, basic little sequences of RNA, self-assemble and self-form through like interactions with really common minerals. And so like we're filling in these gaps. We're getting a little bit closer where like we know where the atoms come from, and we know where the basic molecules come from, and we know how the basic molecules can self-assemble into organic molecules. We're not entirely sure how they do it all the time, but we know that they can, and we know that they can self-assemble into some of the macromolecules, or at least the early stages of them. Still a little fuzzy on some of the details, but we know that they can, and we know these macromolecules are things that make life. RNA is a huge one for me because I'm a big fan of the RNA world hypothesis, because RNA is both genetic information and also a catalyst to a ton of biochemical reactions. And so like you have in a theoretical 10-step process on how life starts, we have steps 2, 3, 4, 7, 9, and 9.5. And you're calling us saying, yeah, but you don't know number 5. And therefore, it's reasonable to assume that it's a guy. And it's the exact same call that we just had a second ago, where it's like, yeah, okay, you know a lot of the stuff, but there's some stuff you don't know. And there's some kind of weird way that I can squint my eyes at it and turn my head, and it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. And therefore, it's some guy. Some guy did it. And I don't get where you bridge that. How do you feel comfortable taking that leap rather than just saying, there's still some parts we don't know, and that's cool, and we'll learn it soon?
I would say because when it comes to the areas that we haven't confirmed yet, an intelligent mind seems to be a much more plausible explanation than natural forces. And you brought up a lot of points. Well, I'll get to that. But
okay.
First of all, you brought up some really interesting things that really interest me. I know you mentioned stellar nucleosynthesis more as a side point.
Real quick, Anthony, are you on a phone or are you on like a computer?
I'm using a headset.
Okay.
Do you want to try to take out the headset and just use my phone to see if that's any better?
Yeah, let's do that.
That would be awesome, yeah.
Do you need a recall in to do that? Or what do we...
Is this any better?
Yeah,
that is so much better.
The buzzing's gone. The audio, the mic quality is worse, but it's much more bearable. So go ahead, Anthony, with the point you're making.
Like I've looked into stellar nucleosynthesis, and I don't want to dwell on this topic for too long. The point you were making, but when you said we know that the atoms, the chemical elements are basically manufactured in these stars, I question that, because when you say we know, that's like direct observation. But I think it's more, we're getting into this idea of what do we really know? It's epistemological. We theorize that these things happen, but I don't think there's any way to prove that the chemical elements are created in stars unless you have some other information for me.
Anthony, this is the type of argument that only pedantic religious people make when they use terms like we theorize. Yeah, we have scientific theories that are based on observed facts. Have we been to the inside of a sun? No. Have we demonstrated that of certain masses, heats, all these sorts of things, that this is what you should expect, and then also measured and basically gone, and if that was true, you would find this, this, and this here in these places. You would measure this from these stars. Yes, we have. Theories are, that's the highest. If there was a hierarchy, theories are the highest, because theories are just collections of facts. Theories and hypotheses are not the same thing. And so it's kind of like, it's almost like you're saying, you walked in, you found the body, you found the note of confession, you found videos of the surrounding area of the murderer leaving, and you had found the confessing no. You find the murder weapon. You find that it is consistent with the blood spatter pattern, which whether or not that's a real type of science or the show Dexter made that up, I don't know. But let's just say it is real. You find all of the evidences and everything that points to it, but you didn't watch the guy bludgeon him yourself. Therefore, we don't know that he murdered. Of course, that is the sort of the deficit of saying you know anything, because we don't know, frankly. Again, when we get into the whole, and it's crazy I'm the one bringing this up first. Usually religious people do. We can't say we know that we even exist, or at least in the way we don't know this isn't a simulation. We don't know anything. However, in as much as reality appears to be present, the things which we can test for consistently point to this. So there are mysteries we've solved. The sun creating these atoms and stuff is one of them. Whether it's through fusion or fission, he'll know, because I'm not that physics interested. I haven't studied all that. Yeah, it'd be fusion. All right, hell yeah.
I'm only half listening. I'm pretty sure you're talking about fusion. I was looking up something I was going to show to Anthony.
We've solved the murder. Just because we weren't there doesn't mean we shouldn't speak in confidence of knowledge when it fills in all of the gaps before, and then is also foundational for filling in gaps later. Gaps which would not fill in if the foundation didn't work also. And this is where the actual conflict comes in, when some things like that do exist, where people say like string theory is a great answer, but a dog shit foundation. And that's why there are some physicists who believe that it's great as a conclusion, but not the foundation of the things which follow. Therefore, it's not demonstrated. Therefore, people who say it is, those are where the arguments amongst actual physicists happen. Not, is there actual fusion happening in the middle of stars?
Yeah, I was going to just show, like, so I just reached behind me and grabbed my undergraduate astronomy textbook. This is basic introductory to astronomy and astrophysics, and like there's whole chapters in here showing how proton chain works and how we get nuclear fusion. This page is ripped because I read it so much, but how we get nuclear fusion inside stars, or even in a laboratory, it would work largely the same way. We make new elements all the time. That's how most of the bottom half of the periodic table is made, is because we make them in nuclear fusion laboratories, and we can see these same physics in action. So it's kind of like when people talk about, like, I recently had a conversation with a creationist guy who was like, well, you never saw this thing evolving into that thing. You never saw the creation of a new genus. And it's like, right, but we know the mechanisms by which this happens, and we can directly observe them. We can see the long-term effects of those same mechanisms, not only through basic logic and just extrapolating on the data we have, but also like through spectrometry. We can look out in space and use spectrometers to see different things, or different elements and different gases and different chemicals in different places. We don't have to go out there and like get a little sample and sniff it. We can use, emission line spectrums and absorption line spectrums and see what's going on out there. I'm not an astronomer or an astrophysicist, but I've got plenty of textbooks like this that break down the math real nice in a way that I did in a lab to pass, and then moved back to my world of biology where things make sense. I'm just saying, like, you're sitting here saying, well, we don't, really know for sure. And what I'm saying to you is, you don't know shit about germ theory or cell theory or plate tectonic theory. Those are all leading scientific theories that explain big things. You might be able to explain what they are, but like, I guarantee that when you get down to the fine details of it, if you haven't studied that shit at a collegiate level, there's no reason for you to know it. So there's no, it's fine. I'm not shaming you. That's fine. But you accept those theories for what they are, despite you not understanding where they came from or the science behind them, because they make sense and they fit into your worldview. But when it comes to things like the Big Bang Theory,
and the anti-germ theory people, the chiropractors,
they're absolutely gonna fucking clip that. But I'm just saying, like, when it comes to the Big Bang, when it comes to stellar nucleosynthesis, when it comes to evolution, when it comes to abiogenesis, when we have these other systems where we have compelling, awesome evidence that you also don't know about, because why would you? Because you're not studying it, and that's fine. Now, all of a sudden, you give this totally different layer of criticism where you're like, yeah, well, we don't really know what's going on in a star, and, we're still missing all this evidence for this and that, and therefore, some guy made the universe. And I just wonder why you would treat these things so differently, and why you would use the kind of thinking that I will give you the courtesy of saying, I doubt you would ever use any other time for any other thing for this particular situation.
I agree with everything Forrest just said, except for his use of the phrase all of a sudden, when the phrase suddenly is 100% of the time better. Anyway, Anthony, you want to respond to that?
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to yield the stellar nucleosynthesis point. Just honestly, I looked into it. I wasn't convinced, but then again, like you said, I'm not an expert, so I'll move on from that. You did mention
you don't have to be an expert. You don't have to be an expert. I encourage you to go pick up just an 1,000 level undergrad textbook and just skim through it and see if it changes your mind. Look up I'll put this in the chat for everybody. I've recommended this a million times on the show. NASA released an astrobiology primer that really easily breaks down most everything we know about the origin of life to this point. It's a couple of years out of date. They haven't made a new one, but it covers just cells, nucleosynthesis, planetary formation. It covers how different things are broken down, self-assembled. Everything that I talked about, it's all in there. I'm going to put it in the chat right now. I'm going to look it up online. I'll put it in there for you.
Anthony, I'm curious, because you're calling in as a theist. I don't think you're a deist. So what if let's just say it was look, fine, I'll say that there's a candidate that it's possible that God's the explanation. I don't actually believe that. I'm not saying it's impossible, but for clarity, I don't think possibility has been ever demonstrated. However, you seem to believe it has, or you're fine skipping that question of possibility and possibility. Which God have you come to the conclusion then is the God that did all that?
Okay, that's a good question. Well, let me say this. I know that there's a lot of stuff in the Bible that at face value appears to be very superstitious and silly and questionable.
You already answered the question by saying that. Go on.
Non-scientific, straight out lies in some places, historically inaccurate. Yeah, for sure. The Bible sucks.
But there is one thing in the Bible that I think is very interesting and philosophically very forward thinking. And that's in Exodus when Moses asked for the name of God. And God responds, if you believe it, which, I'm not saying it's proof of anything, but it's I am that I am. And some scholars say that it's better translated as the eternally self-existent one. So we have in the name of God given by the Bible, ignoring all the talking donkeys and snakes and stuff.
And somehow ignoring that Moses wasn't an actual historical figure, didn't exist. The Exodus is completely made up. I don't
even think that matters.
Also, I just found that part.
It kind of matters.
Immediately after that, God tells Moses to go and tell the Egyptians such and such, and go spread his message. In chapter 4, verse 24, Moses has walked away from that meeting. Immediately after meeting with God, Lord says to Moses in verse 21, go to Egypt, see the Pharaoh, show the Pharaoh all the wonders of me, and blah 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 blah. Immediately after that, God tries to kill Moses, and it says it came to pass that the Lord set upon him to kill him, and then Zechariah took a sharp stone and cut off Moses's foreskin and cast it at his feet, and then the Lord let him go. So literally in that same chapter, I know it's not your point. I'm just throwing it out there. God says, I am that I am, and all these things, and go to Pharaoh and prove how great I am.
Fine.
And immediately after that, tries to kill him until somebody cuts his dick. And then God's like, all right, fine. And that's just a thing that happens. Just throwing that in there. Just a fun little bit about Anthony, that verse that's so deep and philosophical.
I want to be clear, because in fairness, Anthony said he's throwing everything out that doesn't work. So we're doing a bit of a cherry picking thing, but in thousands of words, you found something that you believe is profound and deep. You don't know whether it was the actual intention of the author. You don't know if if you're even reading if the interpretation of the words. We know very little about what the actual meaning of it was. But you're sitting there and you're going, "That's very sophisticated." And but that finding within such a large book of parables, metaphors, and guides on how to own your slaves, finding out of thousands of words a single profound passage certainly isn't why I don't think you've decided I don't think belief is a decision, but certainly isn't why you believe in a God, right? Or are you going to say that's pretty much the deal? Okay, cool.
No, absolutely not. Yeah, I actually do admit the Bible proves nothing. It makes claims, but it's proof of nothing. So I don't want to say this is proof of what I believe, but I guess my only point was that when we're having these conversations, 2024 about eternality and nothingness, and was there always something? Was there ever nothing? And what is the basis of existence? The Bible, in the name of God, says that there was an eternally present being, a mind, and that is God. And I just think that's quite interesting. That it's kind of an answer to the.
I just don't. I don't find it interesting. Again, in thousands of pages with lots of claims, many of which are complete nonsense, and many a times when they attempt to say something scientific, or even just reading into things like blindness being a sin related, or different things being the will of God that turn out to just be natural processes. The weather isn't. God's not sending hurricanes to kill the homosexuals. That's not shit that's happening. So again, in this book where you go, ooh, this thing that I'm reading as speaking of eternal, when in reality, the first talks of eternity are going to be basically the utility of the religion, pretending that you can sell people a product where they're never really going to die. And who's going to deliver it? A guy who never died, who comes from much long before you. Like the fact that God would have these eternal qualities when that is what you are selling to people, if it isn't false, which I think it is, isn't altogether surprising. And that they would say, even if, provided that we're even interpreting that right, that they would say God is eternal, makes sense for the broader claims generally. It's not, I don't know. I don't find it as interesting as you. But you were answering which religion you believe in. So are you saying that it is some sort of biblical God? Are you Jewish? Are you Christian? Are you Muslim?
I would say I think that there are aspects of what is maybe taught in the Bible in an allegorical form that kind of represent to an ancient, primitive people ideas they can relate to, that kind of demonstrate I think a lot of what's in the Bible is anthropomorphization, if I said that correctly, that try to get people to understand in a way that's relatable to people like that.
I feel you, but I'm dying for the answer to the question, which is,
okay,
which God are you into?
I believe there is an eternally existing God that is intelligent, is the basis of creation. It created the universe, it created the earth, and it created life. It's special creation. There was no evolution. And matter, whether it is a creation of God, but God is the eternal existent aspect of the universe and reality.
So to be clear, you don't even respect science. That it's not just that you believe in a God, you believe in a God that does not fit the reality that we are presented with. Because evolution it's not a hypothesis. Evolution is a demonstrated fact. So you're sitting here going, there's an individual who did everything that still made it look like evolution happened, but evolution itself didn't happen. And I don't respect science. I obviously benefit from the fruits of science. I am even connected to having this conversation today because of the same scientific method that demonstrated evolution to be the fact that it is. But because it is in conflict with a personal belief I have that is I guess, rather than summarize, I guess I have more questions about what you believe. How old do you believe the universe is?
Yeah, I believe the universe, I actually, believe it or not, believe the universe is probably way older than scientists say it is. I think it's probably billions. I think it might be eternally existent. I believe
All
in a
right, but
steady
let's
state
just talk about,
universe.
do you accept the Big Bang?
No, I don't.
Okay. So do you accept that the universe is expanding?
I don't think that they know that with the certainty they claim they do.
All right, Anthony, I think we just have to
So,
lock it in here
I can
because
demonstrate
again,
that.
right, it's the universe. These aren't guesses. These are demonstrated facts. The expanding universe has been observed so well that in fact they were surprised, because not only did they measure that the universe was expanding, this is how we discovered this concept of I don't remember if it's dark energy or dark. I always mix up the terms, but when they measured the rate of expansion, they were expecting it to have been decreasing, but it was increasing. Like, it's not just that they have observed and measured that the universe is expanding. So I'm going to let Forrest give his last thoughts. But then I think we have to just stop here, because at the end of the day, foundationally, you and we don't agree upon how we come to conclusions. That science, again, the thing that you are benefiting incredibly from every day, the fact that you can make this phone call at all proves it. That science is a reliable method to get to some truths. And you don't respect the ones that seem to just be in conflict with these sort of spiritual ideas you have, when in reality, some of the biggest religious organizations with the highest investment in trying to make sure people believe in God, otherwise they're going to be really pissed about the crimes they're committing, still accept these things as facts. Like, evolution is studied at the Vatican, and really groundbreaking stuff has come out of their labs about evolution. They were heavily involved in the Human Genome Project. And meanwhile, they're also yet another pedo organization. We'll be talking about several of those apparently in this show. So I don't know how to continue except to say maybe you should call into an episode of Skep Talk, which, by the way, Austin Archer is joining Forrest tomorrow on Skep Talk, and not have a discussion about why do you believe God exists, but have a discussion, which would be more appropriately a theme for Skep Talk, for why you don't respect science and why you don't accept established scientific facts when it suits you or when it doesn't suit your religious beliefs, but you do just sort of tacitly accept the rest, the stuff that does benefit you. I think that's the conversation you have next. Forrest, did you want to add anything before we move on to the next?
Well, I did want one more point.
Yeah,
for sure. You've been perfectly cordial, so you'll definitely get to give your last thoughts and stuff. I just want to make sure Forrest gets in.
Yeah, I was going to ask if everybody was cool with me taking just like 5 minutes to just like go through step by step, like just like the concept of the expansion of the universe and the Big Bang, just not like a proper lecture, but just to see where Anthony's hang up is, because I suspect that just like with evolution and with abiogenesis and with everything else, it's something that he actually doesn't, and again, I'm not trying to shame you here. You've never had a reason to study it, so you haven't studied it, and so you think somebody's just looking at the sky and making some weird vague guess, when in fact we have a lot more to go off of that's a lot more logical, to the point where you don't actually need to be in the lab doing the math to understand it. And instead you're arguing against a straw man that maybe you constructed for yourself, or at the very least, whatever creationist you've been listening to has constructed for you. So if that's cool, I would like to kind of
let's find out, Anthony,
but if not,
are you able to call in tomorrow? Because I'd honestly rather leave that conversation for tomorrow. We've got other theists waiting that I want to.
Okay.
Jump
to. I might be able to. I can't say 100%, but I will make an effort.
I'd say let's try and save it for them then, and just keep on theism and stuff as far as the theme today.
The last thing I want to say, and it won't take very long, is to say I of course I disagree with your characterization that I don't respect science or reject the scientific method. I actually do believe in science. I look at the evidence, and from what I see based on the data and the facts, my conclusions are different. I think that the empirical data actually does show that evolution is false.
Right. So this is why I say you don't respect science.
So then
you're
well, hold on. I'm sorry, because
go ahead.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. Is that you say the empirical evidence says that evolution is actually false. The fact of the matter is, whether you believe in it or not, our understanding of medicine relies on evolution. Without evolution, we don't have antibiotics, we don't have vaccines, we don't understand cancer. Modern medicine is reliant on our understanding of evolution. Modern agriculture is reliant on our understanding of evolution. Without modern understanding of evolution, we would not have enough food to feed the people that we already do in the world. And that's not counting the fact that we have billions of starving people. That is a distribution issue, not a resource issue. We have more than enough food to feed every single person in this world because of evolution and the way that we understand it. Without evolution, we don't have dog breeds. Without evolution, we don't have the kind of things that if you go to the grocery store and buy any plant or animal matter, it is the result of artificial selection. And so, like, when you say the empirical evidence doesn't agree with it, this is one of those times where the whole look at the trees thing actually works in our favor. And I wonder what you're actually you're actually talking about, because it sounds like when you say empirical evidence, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say you actually haven't seen any evidence for it. You haven't actually been in the lab doing any tests of it. You haven't actually, done any actual study of it.
Let's not beat up on it too much just because he's going to call tomorrow.
Well, I'm saying what you've done is you've heard a few scientists talk about it, and you've come back with, well, where are the transitional fossils, or something equally banal and silly. It's like when people say, well, why are there still monkeys if we came from monkeys? Or how did random chance make an eyeball? Or something like that, where a lot of creationists say it. And if you're able to ask a question like that, it means you don't understand what evolution actually is. And I have a sneaking suspicion that if you were to tell me about the empirical evidence that you claim to have researched and reviewed and found a different truth, I have a feeling that's what the kind of thing is going to be. So
let's do this. Anthony,
that's my last thing.
Call in tomorrow with your best. When you say the empirical evidence doesn't point to evolution, or that I think you might have even said that it disproves, whatever your position is. Call in with your best argument for that. Tomorrow's the perfect day. It's Forrest and Austin's there too. Austin's great and is great at conversations too. But you're gonna have an actual evolutionary biologist to talk to and to evaluate that information and stuff. And I very much encourage you to take advantage of that, because I do believe that you are an inquisitive person. I hope that you also do want to allow to know what the truth is, wherever that leads you. But we are going to move on now, because we are 37 minutes in, and
all right, thank you for
do you want to give any final thoughts before you go, Anthony? Oh, you might have hung up already. That was a quick goodbye.
Well, I hope he does call back, because like that's really what I want to hammer into, is like I don't want to speak for him, and I feel badly that I kind of did there at the end, but like that's really I would bet my left dick that he's going to say, listen, man, if evolution's true, then we should have all sorts of half human, half monkey things running around right now, or something equally ridiculous. Or he's going to say, well, evolution can't explain this or that, as if that is evidence for creationism. And that's simply just not how it works. And I'm dying to know what the actual evidence is that he's going to talk about. You know what I mean?
Hey, it's Jimmy Snow here. I'm the executive producer on the line with a fun fact. Did you know 100% of the hosts of this channel enjoy eating? It's true. And if you would like to help contribute to their ongoing addiction, you can do so by going over to Patreon or becoming a channel member. There are show-specific, host-specific tiers. Those are awesome. But also, you can leave a super thanks with a special little highlighted comment. You can like, comment, and subscribe. All of those will help fill our whittle bellies. By the way, check out some of this content over here. Algorithm, what next?